If your home has experienced a water disaster, the first step is assessing the extent of the damage. It is best to contain the source of the water and trace it. You may need to drill a hole in the ceiling to drain the pooled water. Ensure that you protect the hole with plastic or other protective materials. If you can't locate the source of the leak, you can call a professional to assess the damage. The first step is to evaluate the extent of the water damage in the attic. This can be caused by a burst pipe or a hole in the roof. It is best to hire a professional to inspect the damage to prevent the possibility of electrical problems. If you have woodwork in the attic, make note of the extent of the damage. A small spot may not indicate extensive damage, but it can be a sign of rotting and should be addressed immediately. The next step is to determine the source of the leak. This could be from a burst pipe or a hole in the roof. While exploring the attic, be careful not to touch anything that could be electrical. While checking the location of the leak, take note of the extent of the water damage. A small spot on woodwork may not be indicative of rotting. In such cases, the best course of action is to hire a professional to inspect the attic. The next step is to assess the extent of the water damage in the attic. It is important to identify what the exact cause of the leak is. You should be aware that this is often a plumbing problem. Even if you're using a vapor barrier, mold can grow and produce spores. If you're unsure of the cause of the leak, you can call a professional for an estimate. The next step is to clean and repair the water damage. This can be a tricky process. It's crucial to remove all stored items. Depending on the severity, you may need to replace carpets and rugs to avoid any potential mold and mildew problems. In addition to these, you may also need to hire a professional to repair the damaged walls. This step is not a DIY project. Fortunately, there are ways to prevent water damage. However, you'll need to carefully evaluate the extent of the damage. A small leak can be repaired yourself, but a large leak could require a professional. A good way to avoid the problem is to check for signs of water damage in the attic. It's advisable to remove all stored items and make sure the attic is ventilated well enough to keep out the moisture. Once you've cleaned up the water-damaged attic, it's time to replace the damaged insulation. The old insulation is not as efficient as newer insulation, so you may need to replace it. Changing the attic insulation can save you a lot of money on utility bills. Moreover, the new insulation will also be more energy efficient, saving you money on utilities. If the leak is still there, the cleanup process will need more work than a DIY job. While the costs of water damage cleanup are low, the actual cost of restoration can be as much as $3,500. The most important step in water damage restoration is to remove all of the water and dry the affected area. Otherwise, the remaining water will cause mold and mildew growth in the attic. A professional plumber will also perform mold remediation. These professionals will also replace any drywall that is damaged. They'll also need to repair the insulation in the attic. The first step in the water damage restoration process is to remove the remaining water. Excess water will lead to mold and mildew growth, so it's essential to remove it as quickly as possible. The best way to do this is to hire a professional who specializes in water removal. You can even do it yourself if you know how. If you can't afford a professional, you can do some of the cleanup yourself.